Whenever we get upside down, we have two goals. Number one, gain control of the handstand, and number two, stay in control longer. In order to make this happen, we have to improve our line, we have to optimize our technique to be more efficient and more effective. You see, when training handstands, many coaches are going to tell you to just kind of do whatever works best for you. Find your technique, find your alignment. Whilst I appreciate this approach to life, this doesn't really make sense when it comes to handstand. Let's look at other sports that are more popular and where there's a bigger financial aspect to them, like for example, Olympic weightlifting or sprinting. If you look at the top 1, 10, maybe even 20% of the athletes, we're quickly going to realize almost every single one of them has precisely the same base technique. This is because with the help of exercise science, we were able to understand how to make a movement as effective as possible. There is a most effective and most efficient technique when it comes to handstands. Now the argument point of course remains is that one kid that won Olympic gold started at the age of 3 next to 10,000 other kids, and this one kid is the chosen one who then on top of that trained extremely hard for a very long period of time just to become this one perfect role model for this discipline. And yes, I will never argue against this. You did not start as a child and you're not going to spend 25 years, 8 hours a day training handstands. No one's asking that from you. But here's the idea. By understanding this perfect alignment and perfect technique, you're going to be able to make your own decisions of where you have to dial it back a little bit to make adjustments based on your very own personal limiting points. In today's video, I'm going to explain to you exactly how you can make your handstand as efficient as it can possibly be and where you can make adjustments based on your limiting points. You're going to learn strategies and techniques that you can apply straight away to go away from balancing your handstand and actually control your handstand every single time. Because to be honest, when you're standing on your hands, you should be in control. You're not balancing, you're not walking on a tightrope. Your hands are capable. Now before we get into controlling the handstand, let's see how we can make the handstand as effective as possible. If I'm standing on my feet, let's say waiting for the bus or something, if I'm nice and upright, core engaged, knees are tight, it's pretty easy. Now go down into a half squat. Gets a little harder. Now imagine we're waiting for the bus for 10 minutes or maybe 2 hours. So you're in Germany. This is gonna get exhausting. You wanna stand up here. It's exactly the same if you're standing inside of a band. This comparing a little bit better to the handstand than the bus stop example. If I'm pushing tall against the band, it's fairly easy. Yes, I have to engage to push tall, but I feel strong and protected. But if I bend my knees, arch my back, and bend my elbows, everything starts to shake because the position is exhausting. You know what's also exhausting? A banana handstand. Because this is exactly how you look like when you're doing a banana handstand. Your handstand is efficient when all of your joints are stacked on top of each other in one straight line. A banana is not that. You want to try to get rid of as many angles as possible. Lock out your elbows, elevate your shoulders, straighten your back. Your longest line is always your straightest line. So really, your goal should be simply to get as tall as you can possibly be. Now that we know how to make the handstand effective and efficient, let's see how we can cut balance completely out of the equation and prove that it's really all about control at all times. Let's come back to the example of standing on your feet. To make it a little bit more drastic, we're going to stand even on one foot. Now analyze how this feels. What is really happening? You're standing, you begin to fall, say towards the front. It takes a little bit of time, you realize that you're falling, you're applying pressure through your toes, you're pushing yourself back to get back to your position, and you either push too far, so now you're falling the other direction, or you push too little and you're still falling towards the front. In your handstand, this is the same thing. You're standing, you begin to fall, you understand that you fall, you realize in which direction you fall, you apply pressure, you push yourself back. This is going to continue forever. Just like on one foot, your ankle is always working. The only thing that's going to change over time is that you get better at this. You're going to detect sooner that you're falling, in which direction that you're falling, and your counter reactions are going to become more precise and simply sooner. Eventually, all of these corrections are going to become smaller and smaller and smaller until you create the illusion of perfect stillness. Now, coming back to standing on one foot, there's one more thing that you realize. If you're waiting for the bus, meaning there's no evil around and you're fully relaxed, your weight's going to be a little bit more towards the back of your heels, because that's where it's easy. Your calves can relax, your body can basically take a break. But if you think that you might have to stop this bus with your bare hands, or a more logical example, someone's going to throw something at you at the gym or in the grocery store, a bag of potatoes for example, you're going to take that weight and put it into your toes. Your calf engages, you take control. You're grabbing the floor with your toes. That's where you have control. Back here, as soon as the weight drops towards the back of your heel, you know you don't have control and you start to panic. Now when you're doing your handstand, it has to be exactly the same thing. At all times, you have to lean your weight towards the front into the fingertips. You need to be fingertip heavy. This golden line of alignment that some people like to discuss, saying you need to find the spot where your handstand feels weightless, it doesn't exist. We don't want this golden line. We don't want our handstand to be easy. The more you lean into your fingertips, the more control you're gonna have. Yet at the same time, the more pressure there's gonna be on your wrist, which means it's gonna be more intimidating, and to an extent it could even be painful. In an ideal world, we would lean so far into the fingertips that it becomes impossible to fall over. Unfortunately, that can't happen because our fingers and wrists are not that strong and risk of injuries will become too high. It's basically here where you have to find your right spot of alignment. How far can you lean towards the front? How much control can you get of your handstand without sacrificing health, comfort, and strength too much? Now, being fingertip heavy and gaining control of your handstand can happen in many different shapes and forms. As discussed earlier, the ideal scenario would be then you're in one perfectly straight line, because we know that all joints perfectly stacked on top of each other is going to be the most effective way of holding your handstand. But all joints perfectly stacked on top of each other doesn't mean that you're fingertip heavy, because this line can be perfectly on top of your wrists. If I'm standing upright and my line is on top of the heels, I don't have control. I have to lean towards the front. You need to take this straight line, starting with the shoulders, and move it on top of the center of the hands, because that's where most people gain most control. Now there's 3 more scenarios how you can basically be in control whilst not being perfectly aligned. 2 of them involve your shoulders moving towards the front. The most common one is the banana handstand. Your shoulders move towards the front, your back arches. You have a lot of weight in your fingertips, but because of the arch back, your handstand is not stable and not efficient anymore. The other option with your shoulders in front would be shoulders in front, straight back and piked at the hips. You see your center of mass is still on top of the center of your hands, meaning your handstand is somewhat aligned, it balances itself out while you're still fingertip heavy. Yet again, all the extra angles make your handstand less effective. Additionally, you're placing a big angle in your wrists, which is going to cause inflammation and pain. The last option that's quite common with athletes who didn't used to have flexible shoulders but have rather flexible shoulders now, who work very hard on opening the shoulders, is the shoulders being too open. If you push your shoulders out towards the armpits just a tiny little bit so they're not on top of the wrists, but even further out, the back is going to arch, bringing the feet on top. You're basically doing a tiny little hollow back handstand. You see your center of mass is still on top of your hands. You can still be fingertip heavy so you have control, but your handstand is definitely not effective. Now, in order to come back from any of these positions back to our straight line, we have to adjust all of the joints simultaneously at the same time, because we are perfectly balanced. You see, if I'm in the banana handstand and I engage my core to straighten out my back, I'm just going to fall out because I'm missing this counterweight in the back. You have to fix everything towards that straight line in the same moment. The only way to truly be able to adjust your form is by applying pressure through your wrists. With every single movement that happens in the handstand, pressure travels through your body and eventually through your shoulders, through your wrists, into the floor. This is why it's so very important that your shoulders are stable and your elbows are locked. Because this pressure travels through your body and your shoulders move, your movement is not efficient anymore, and out of this 100% energy given, only 80 or maybe 60% are actually going to go into moving your limb. Now let's assume that you're perfectly aligned, straight line on top of the center of your hands. You're about to fall in any direction, because we've already discussed your handstand is never still. Let's assume you're falling towards your backside, towards the back of your body. That's a pretty simple fix. You're going to push your fingertips into the floor and push yourself back. If the pressure gets too big, your core might relax a little bit, so your back starts to arch, so you delay the process of falling over and you push back. Building the strength, the coordination, and especially the confidence of pushing back is not easy, which is why it's very important you don't train with your back towards the wall. If every time that you fall, you tap the wall with your foot, you will never understand for how long you can actually fight for your handstand. That's the ideal scenario, falling over towards the back. But of course, when you push back, you might push a little bit too far, or for whatever reason, you are going to fall in the opposite direction. Maybe you got tired, you stopped applying as much forward pressure, you want to make your handstand physically a little bit less exhausting, knowing you're going to sacrifice some safety of your handstand hold. You brought your weight more towards the back of your hands. Now all of a sudden you realize that you are falling towards the back of your hands. You don't have fingertips on that side of your body, so what you gonna do? The only thing that you really left to do is to bend your elbows. You bend your elbows to get your lowest joint, the connection with the floor, back underneath your body in hopes you might be able to push yourself back up. Falling and losing control is a big part of learning the handstand. It's gonna take time, and pretty much every single athlete that I've ever worked with goes exactly through the same progress. You first get up, you train your handstand, there's zero control. you gain strength, you gain coordination. Then one day, this magic moment comes along when you realize that you're falling. That's already a big step. You realize that you're falling. You're able to apply pressure to slowly fall down. When you've reached that moment in your handstand journey, you've broken through. You've got everything you could possibly get. Because if you can slow it down, you now understand how, when, and where to apply pressure. Now you just need to get better at it, and you're going to be able to save your handstand. If you want to start training handstands today with a customized workout, follow the link down below. Work your way through the customization question and request this free workout into your inbox straight away. Thank you so much. I'll see you at the gym.